move to recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator Pia Cayetano. So move.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. President, I'd like to thank our colleagues. No, I asked for a minute suspension to also gather the wisdom of the Senate. No, and I'd like to commend our colleague Senator Tulfo for raising this very important issue. We also took the opportunity to ask DepEd what actions, if any, have they taken upon receipt of similar complaints, and they confirmed that upon receipt of similar complaints, they have received similar complaints, and they have actually suspended airing PTAs. So on that note, Your Honor, they are prepared to issue a department order strengthening the law.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's all, Mr. President, Your Honor. Thank you. On behalf of the thousands and thousands and thousands of parents who have students in public elementary school, would like to thank DepEd and the sponsor na magpapalabas na po kayong department order para to strengthen the law. At pag nagkaroon ng violation, magkakaroon po silang sanction. Yun lang po talaga ang gusto ko mangyari para matuwa na po yung maraming mga magulang. Thank you very much, Mr.
Maraming
President.
salamat.
I
Thank
rest
you
my
very
case.
much. Thank you very much, Senator Tulfo, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, we thank the gentleman from Isabela and Davao for raising that very important issue, Mr. President, and we also thank our sponsor for giving us a bird's eye view of what will happen in the coming months, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to interpellate, for his short interpellation, may I move that we recognize our Deputy Majority Leader, Senator J.B. Ejercito. So move, Mr. President.
Senator, Majority,
Just 2
Deputy
points, Mr.
Majority
President.
Leader is recognized.
Yes, these are valid points for DepEd, Mr. President. Mr. President, Your Honor, Madam Chair, for the record, how many really is the public school classroom shortages in the country? Do you have an information?
Yes, Your Honor, we have that number. So, Mr. President, to be clear, Mr. President, we have different categories, yung new classroom, repair of classrooms. So I'll just respond to the new classroom. No, I would assume that's the most commonly thought of when we think of a classroom shortage. So for the new classrooms, the actual gap is 158,779 classrooms.
So, for the record, that's 158,000 classrooms.
Almost 159,
Yes, almost
158,700.
And likewise, is it true, Madam Chair, that of that number, a total of about 440 classrooms were destroyed in storms or other disasters?
That seems to be accurate, Your Honor.
I'm just worried, Madam Chair, Mr. President, because under fiscal year 2024, DepEd has an allocation of 19.6 billion for the construction of new school buildings. Is this accurate, Madam Chair? Is this in the National Expenditures Program?
Yes, Your Honor.
How much is the allocation for repairs?
6.5 billion, Your Honor.
Yes, my concern, Madam Chair, Mr. President, under the GAB, I observed that there was an increase in the budget for the construction of new classrooms from 19.6 billion to 24.6 billion. However, this is my concern, which you mentioned earlier, that the repairs and rehabilitation of classrooms was decreased from 6.5 billion to 1.5 billion. Madam Chair, I'm worried because, as you know, we are in the Pacific Ring of Fire, always visited by about 20 typhoons, prone to calamities. And this is a low-hanging fruit, Madam Chair, because I was also a chief executive. I was a mayor once in my lifetime, and I know for a fact that it is much easier, faster, to rehabilitate and repair classrooms that can be used right away than to construct new classrooms. Kaya po nag-aalala po ako, what is the reason for the increase in the budget of construction of new classrooms and the decrease in the budget of repairs and rehabilitation? Because this is a new low-hanging fruit, Madam Chair.
Yes. Mr. President, to be clear, so for the understanding of our other colleagues and yung mga nanonood nga po sa atin, tama po yung observation ni Senator J.V. Ejercito na ang ating ang nasa NEP, no, ito po yung lumabas sa DBM na budget ng repairs of classrooms is nasa 6.5. Tapos po nung dumating sa atin ang GAB, ito po yung version ng House of Representatives, lumiit po ang repairs of classroom from 6.5 to 1.5. So factual po yan, bumabaho ng 5 billion. So nung hinahanap po natin kung saan napunta, mukha hong napunta ito dito sa construction of new classrooms. Kasi under the NEP, yung galing nga po sa DBM, it's 19.5, and then ngayon under the GAB coming from the House, it's now 24.6.
So there's an increase, Madam Chair, of 5 billion
Of 5 billion. That's why
for
ang
new.
conclusion natin is nilipat po iyon doon. Siyempre po, tayo naman, lahat naman tayo dito, happy naman tayo of course for the construction of new classrooms. But we always study saan nanggaling yung pondo because we have limited funds. So kung yan ho ay nanggaling nga dito sa pang-repair, as His Honor pointed out, Mr. President, nakakahinayang naman kasi maraming repair na kumbaga sa less, it makes sense naman po, di ba? Imbis na magpatayo ka ng 4 walls,
Mas madali
and
magpatayo.
roof,
Magpaayos.
and another
Mag-repair.
bathroom,
Yes.
madali naman po magpaayos, di ba? Hindi naman po yung napaka-komplikado naman po ng architecture nito, di ba? Baka ho may problema lang sa bubong, baka ho yung banyo. So, mas marami ang mare-repair kaysa sa matatayo sigurong bago. So nag-aalala din po tayo dyan, and I thank His Honor for bringing that up because lagi ho tayo naghahanap ng mabilis pero maaasahang solusyon. So mabilis sana ho yung pag-repair.
And likewise, yung classroom shortage that you mentioned, about 109,
yes, yung binanggit natin.
59,000, I think it will be faster for us to be able to utilize classrooms that can be repaired
Yes.
or rehabilitated than to construct new ones.
Yes, and we had the opportunity to discuss this issue with the Secretary and kinonfirm po niya na kailangan din nila yung pondong yan para po sa repairs.
Anyway, I also have information, Madam Chair, Mr. President, that 24.6 billion allocated under the GAB, but only 9.8 billion from the allocation is left to the discretion of DepEd. Is this accurate, ma'am? Because if this is so, from what I know, if it's DepEd, this will be needs, based on needs, Your Honor.
Yeah. So again, I'll repeat the numbers, no. Nasa 24 billion ang budget ng DepEd for the new construction. Pero nung dumating ho sa atin ang galing sa House, na-identify nila ang roughly 10 billion or 14.8 billion. Therefore, parang ang naiwan na lang na budget for DepEd to construct schools that they believe are priorities is less than 10? Less than 10 billion. Is that accurate? Less than 10 billion. So, we have also discussed this with DepEd because, syempre po, Mr. President, we look to the agencies for we look to their wisdom for the implementation of their programs. We assume that they are the institution that knows the state of education of the whole country. Kung hindi naman ho issue ang funding, syempre lahat patatayuan natin bukas na bukas, lahat. Wala naman hong issue sa kagustuhan natin na lahat ng barangay magkaroon ng sariling eskwelahan. But given the shortage, I have to assume that alam ng DepEd kung sino yung kailangan bigyan. For example, may malaking syudad na maluwag pa naman ang ibang classroom, so pwede sigurong yung isa munang syudad ang bigyan, di ba ho, Mr. President? So katulad din yun na naging mayor, I'm sure may time na mag-share muna ang barangay, di ba, ng facilities. Then later, saka sila magkakanya-kanya. So, as chairman of the budget of DepEd, I do hope that with the wisdom of the Senate, we can assist DepEd in having a bigger say on the distribution of those schools, because we just really want to ensure, Mr. President, na makakarating sa bawat barangay ng Pilipinas, lalo na yung mga nangangailangan talaga, ang classrooms na kailangan sa lugar nila, Mr. President.
Before I end, Madam Chair, Mr. President, if example, the 24 billion, for example, can the DepEd be able to utilize this, yung 24 billion, to be able to build new classrooms?
Mr. President, sorry, can you please repeat?
For example, we will be able to give the DepEd the discretion to have new construction, the new school buildings or classrooms. Can they be able to utilize? Kaya po naman po nila.
Yes, Mr. President, itong 24 billion na pinapag-usapan natin, kumbaga nasala na yan, kasi from the past experience of this representation, we always discuss with them to ensure na kaya nilang ma-utilize yung budget, kasi ayaw ho ng DBM na nakatenga lang po yung pondo doon. Mr. President, pwede ko lang hubang idagdag dun sa sinabi ko, DepEd has their prioritization for new constructions. It's important that we put this on record. Galing po ito kasi meron po tayong EDCOM kung saan we are constantly in coordination with DepEd and other sectors. So ito po yung prioritization ng DepEd. Schools with learners having classes in makeshift or open spaces and other alternative learning spaces. Number 2, schools with remaining classroom requirement shortage. Kung kumbaga may school na, dadagdagan na lang. 3, replacement of school buildings totally damaged by typhoons and other calamities structurally. 4, schools located geographically isolated, disadvantaged, and conflict areas, it's otherwise known as GIDCA, with high incident of poverty. 5, schools damaged by calamities that are not included in the QRF, the Quick Response Fund, and schools with no program construction for the past 5 years. So ito ho yung set of priorities ng DepEd, and as their sponsor, the sponsor of their budget, nais ko din naman po na masunod itong priorities.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. President. Likewise, I would like to reiterate that we're hoping that the budget, the allocation for repairs and rehabilitation will be restored. No? Because as I mentioned, I'd like to reiterate, this is a low-hanging fruit that the students will be able to utilize as soon as possible. Because as I mentioned, we are being visited by a lot of calamities or even storms every year. May nakita ko mga nakatiwangwang because of lack of funding for repairs. So I'm hoping that we can restore this, Madam Chair, because I think it will be more practical and it can be utilized easily by our students. That's all, Mr. President, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our colleague.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to interpolate is our minority leader, but Senator Bato de la Rosa, the gentleman from Davao and Bohol, would like to make a statement, a manifestation. May I move that he be recognized, Mr. President?
Our distinguished colleague from Davao and Bohol, no other than Senator Bato de la Rosa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Madam Chairman, good sponsor. Good afternoon po. First, short manifestation of support, manifestation of gratitude, and manifestation of appeal. Number one, I would like to manifest my support for the approval of the budget of DepEd. And number two, ako po'y nagpapasalamat from the bottom of my heart to our DepEd Secretary for forgetting about the confidential funds. And it spared the Senate from debates regarding this issue. Maraming salamat po. At number three, I would like to appeal to DepEd
Thank you, brother.
na sana to remind always their teachers about the legal doctrine of locus parentis, which emphasized the legal responsibilities of the teacher who are entrusted by the parents doon sa kanilang mga anak. And in line with this, remind ko rin sila, itong Article 218 of the Family Code, the schools, its administrators and teachers, or the individual entity or institution engaged in child care shall have special parental authority and responsibility over the minor child while under their supervision, instruction, or custody. Authority and responsibility shall apply to all authorized activities, whether inside or outside the premises of the school, entity, or institution. Kaya ko ito binanggit, Mr. President, dahil nga, sana, appeal ko sa kanila is that, Madam Sponsor, even without the confidential funds, sana siguruhin natin na wala na mga bata na ma-recruit ng CPP-NPA doon sa kabundukan at makipaglaban sa ating gobyerno at mamatay. Yun lang appeal ko, Mr. President, good sponsor, dahil nga, noong 18th Congress, the last Congress, no, we were together with a good sponsor nung nagkaroon tayo ng hearing about those missing minors, lumalabas talaga sa investigation natin na ang mga bata na nawawala at napunta sa CPP-NPA ay nanggagaling dyan sa senior high school, grades 11 and 12, which is under the care of DepEd. So, Mr. President, good sponsor, sana isipin palagi ng mga teachers kung bilang second parents ng ating mga anak, these children are entrusted to them. Alam natin, during the hearing, palaging ini-emphasize ng mga school authorities na we cannot do otherwise because of academic freedom. They are free to choose kung gusto nila mag-rebuild or what. But sana, very clear dito sa ating family code na dapat may responsibilidad ng mga teacher pagdating sa pag-alaga ng ating mga kabataan. Kung ang parents ay ayaw na magiging rebelde ang kanilang mga anak, you, being the second parents, ay dapat gano'n din ang paningin natin sa mga bata na dapat hindi ito ma-recruit ng CPP-NP, hindi ma-radicalized, hindi ma-recruit, hindi aakyat sa bundok, mag-armas, lumaban sa ating gobyerno at mamatay na walang kasaysayan yung kanilang buhay. So yun lang po, good sponsor, ang aking apila sa ating Department of Education. Sana po nakikinig yung ating mga teachers ngayon. At sana, hindi na magdagdag. Because we are on the last stretch of our campaign against this insurgency. Pero ngayon medyo nabuhayan sila. Nabuhayan yung mga komunista dahil nga parang lumalabas na talagang panalo sila. Nahinto nila yung DepEd from having their confidential funds, which supposed to be used doon sa paghinto sa paglaganap ng recruitment doon sa mga kabataan sa senior high school. Another topic, Madam Chair, good sponsor, is about the salugpungan schools. Alam natin na itong mga salugpungan schools ay they are being run by the CPP, NPA, and during the last Congress, mainit ang bakbakan dito about this. And I was assured by the then Secretary, Madam Liling Briones, Secretary Briones, na wala na daw existing na salugpungan schools ngayon sa buong Pilipinas. And I hope, kasi itong mga salugpungan schools na pinapatakbo ng CPP, NPA, NDF, ay ito yung nag-sprout dahil sa kawalan ng DepEd sa kanilang area. So sana lahat ng barangays mabigyan natin ng proper educational institution, particularly sa basic education. Dahil susulpot na naman itong mga salugpungan schools at kawawa ang ating mga bata at a very young age ay napupunta na sa armado ng CPP-NP. Kasi nga, as you record, according to DepEd, 55 lumad schools operated by the Salugpungan, Taitang Egkagunon Community Learning Center Incorporated sa 2019. I hope hindi na ito maibalik. And 12.3% of the rebels who surrendered in 2016 to 2020 were minors aged 12 to 17 years old. Ito mga edad na ito ay obviously nasa basic education ito na edad. So I hope, Madam Chair, good sponsor, through the DepEd officials, i-remind palagi natin yung ating mga teachers about the doctrine of locus parente. Maraming salamat. Mr. President, Madam Chair, thank you po. Salamat.
Yes, just like to add that we support the efforts of Senator Bato and all the government agencies to reduce the insurgency in our country. But I would like to ask Senator Bato de la Rosa, did you accept the Vice President's invitation for you to climb Mount Apo?
Well,
I
Mr.
think there was a
President,
challenge.
Well, Mr.
Meron
President-
yatang Mount Apo challenge.
because of my eagerness to accept her challenge, na-overtrain ako, Mr. President. Nagkaroon ako ng injury dahil every morning nag-treadmill ako for more than 1 hour. Kaya ito ngayon, back to zero na naman ang preparation ko. But kahit na halos kalahati lang yung edad ng ating DepEd Secretary sa akin, lalabanan ko siya sa akyatan kahit saang bundok dito sa Pilipinas. Basta bigyan mo lang ako ng
Bawal
tamang
helicopter,
preparation.
Senator Bato. Lakad talaga.
Lakad talaga ito, Mr. President. Lakad talaga.
Sige.
Thank you.
Alright,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bato.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to make a very short manifestation is the distinguished gentleman from the province of Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino. I move that he be recognized.
My
Mr.
distinguished
President.
colleague, Senator Francis Tolentino, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I totally associate myself with the manifestation of our dear colleague, Senator De La Rosa, especially as to the locus parenti doctrine. And I fully know that the DepEd family is doing the best efforts to address the concerns, especially in areas far from the urban centers. And Mr. President, the good sponsor knows fully well that I'm multitasking. I'm also preparing my lesson plans for today. I have a class within 2 hours. I'm also a teacher. So again, that locus parenti doctrine do not fully explain in the GAA or even in existing laws, aside from those mentioned by the good gentleman from Davao, is still the correct concept. The DepEd, the teachers, should be the parents of the students. Yun lang po, Mr. President, at dagang salamat.
Mr. President, thank you. Senator Jinggoy Estrada would like to ask just one question, Mr. President. So we'll give way to his one question. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Our distinguished colleague from San Juan is recognized.
If the sponsor will yield to just one question. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, during the last election, the BSK barangay SK election, there were reports that I have received. In fact, I have a video here showing that teachers, some of the teachers in one of the cities here in Metro Manila, have been accused of cheating. And I also have a picture here that a teacher read some official ballots with the stub of the upper part still attached to the official ballot. And that should have been a spoiled ballot, Mr. President. Mr. President, my question is, what are the possible sanctions that can be imposed against erring school teachers who have been caught cheating during elections? Kasi dito, sa video na ito, parang merong mga sinisingit na balota ron sa loob ng ballot boxes. And if this can happen to a city here in Metro Manila, it can also happen nationwide. May I know the possible sanctions, Mr. President?
Mr. President, the violation, no, of the conduct of a teacher which would amount to a violation of election laws would be under the jurisdiction of COMELEC, but DepEd can receive these complaints and forward it to
Maybe I
COMELEC.
can forward the video message and the
Yes,
pictures.
of course.
Forward it.
Of course.
We'll forward it
But
to
the
the
ultimate,
Department of Education.
The ultimate judge or the ones who will hear
Will be
this
the
offense
COMELEC,
would be
not the
COMELEC,
DepEd.
not the DepEd.
All right. Because this is a major concern of my part. In my part, maybe my colleagues here would also agree with me that cheating has no place
Of course.
during elections. That's why we have to have an orderly, peaceful, and clean and honest elections. That is why I am really very worried about the actions of some. I am not generalizing everybody, but some of our teachers who are still performing acts of cheating. And I can send this video to the Department of Education. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jinggoy. Mr. President, last but not the least, I move that we recognize our distinguished minority leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. So
Our
moved,
distinguished
President.
minority floor leader, Senator Quirino Coco Pimentel III is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of our sponsor.
Of course, Mr. President.
So, we are discussing the Senate Committee on Finance, the subcommittee, report, Mr. President. Our report increases the budget of the department, of the family, by 3.499 billion. May we know, Mr. President?
3.499, tama ba?
Yes, with the Office of the Secretary getting 3 billion increase under our committee report.
Yes, Mr. President.
May we find out where all of this went and why?
What is the question? Can you find out?
The distribution of the 3.499 billion
okay.
increased by our committee. I think we used as the draft the House GAB,
3 billion.
and then over and above the GAB level, we added 3.499 billion.
So 3 billion. 360. So ito lang. Okay. So, Mr. President, the breakdown would be as follows. Support to school and learners program, that's the teaching overload pay, that's 200 million. And this is the distribution. And that 200 million is further distributed as follows: elementary, 40 million; junior high school, 60 million; senior high school, 100 million. And then there is a special hardship allowance. This is 300 million. The school voucher program, 1 billion. And then the educational human resource development program, which is the training of teachers for the Matatag curriculum, that is 1.5 billion. Tuloy ko to. Ito lang yung tinanong niya. Oo. That's for DepEd, and then there is additional 69 million for ECCD, that's the early childhood. Then there's 35.42 million for National Academy of Sports, then 25 million for NBDB, and then 20 million for NCCT, and then 350 million for NM, National Museum.
For the attached agencies. Thank you,
The-
Mr. President.
The latter one were all attached agencies, Your Honor.
Thank you. So, so how does this amount of our committee report, this 718 billion, compare with the NEP level for the DepEd family, Mr. President? From the NEP, is it an increase?
Yes, Mr. President. The NEP was 714.16 billion, and our Senate report came out as 718.08 billion.
So tayo po ang nagtaas, ang Senado ang nagtaas actually. Sa House po ba yes?
Well, I was going to answer, but it appears the follow-up question is, what did the House do?
Sa House po ba ay binawasan nila ng 125, 150 million?
No, Mr. President. So, ang Senate, nagtaas po tayo ng almost 4 billion.
Yes.
Ang House, nagtaas ng 395 million.
Nagdagdag pa pala.
Oo,
Okay.
pero pwede niyo akong tanungin kung saan napunta
In
yun.
spite, no, yan, tumaas pa rin sa House ang GAB in spite of their announcement that they cut the confidential fund of the DepEd in the amount of 150. In
Yes,
spite
Mr.
in spite of
President.
eliminating that amount, the House bill still increased the budget for the DepEd family. We're talking about the family muna. The family with the attached
Yes,
agencies.
that's accurate, Mr.
Okay po.
President.
So meaning to say that the confidential fund of the Office of the Secretary in the amount of 150 was not taken out of the DepEd family. Nandun.
Yes, again, we are talking about the House. Yung
Yes,
sa-
the House. And
yung sa House.
yes, I
Oo.
think in the Senate also. I think we are not in the Senate, we did not restore that 150.
Yes.
And yet imbis na bumaba nga ang budget, that higher pa nga by 3.499 eh. So it's a
Yes.
Senate committee which augmented the budget of the entire DepEd family.
Correct, correct.
Yes.
I hesitate to answer, Your Honor, because I don't want to violate executive session because there was some kind of decision made there, Your Honor, no? So, can I ask for a minute suspension?
Session suspended. Alam mo sabi niya? Alam mo sagot, alam mo.